Hello, I'm Catherine Rowan, and in this video, I am speaking specifically to women about the divine feminine or the divine mother. And the message that I want to convey is that you are a representation of the divine feminine in form. And I'd like to clear up some of the misunderstandings that I read and hear about with regard to the divine feminine and to women. And I think maybe the biggest one of those that I come across is, even though I've just said you're a representative of the divine feminine in form, does this mean that all women are embodying the divine feminine? And in my opinion, no, it doesn't. In my opinion, it's generally a journey to truly embody the divine feminine. But when I say you are a representation, I'm speaking of your potential. And it's your choice as to whether you make that journey to embody and be a representation of the divine feminine on this planet in a world that surely needs more representations, more role models of the divine feminine, because it's certainly my belief that the world is hungry for those examples and those role models. And that applies to both women and to men, and that this hunger is largely unconscious. One of the issues that, or the main issue actually, that we all face, both women and men, with regard to women being examples of the divine feminine, but also men maturing the inner feminine in their own bodies and lives, is the fact that we live in a patriarchal paradigm. So a paradigm is like, it's like this actually the word would be the matrix within which we live, but on its own that word is very interesting because matrix, ma, implies divine mother, but actually patriarchy is a patrix, and this is what we live in. So it's like, if we would say the environment, fish swim in water, birds fly in air, and human beings, the medium through which we're having to live our lives is the patrix. It's patriarchy. So we need to look at the patriarchal overlay, which distorts both the divine, which distorts both the masculine and feminine qualities. In other words, in patriarchy, we tend to get what would be called shadow forms of the masculine and feminine qualities. And in order for those to be transformed to the divine feminine or even the divine masculine, means that we must look at the patriarchal conditioning, the patriarchal structures that we all live in, and transform those. Because although, actually transforming patriarchy as a structure that we live in is likely to take longer than our lifetimes. I mean, maybe not if everybody had the awakening to these ideas and took the responsibility for transforming it, in themselves, their own lives, and then taught that down to the next generations. Okay, it could transform quite quickly, but the likelihood of that happening, seeing it hasn't happened over the last few thousands of years, the likelihood of that happening in our lifetime is maybe not so high, but it is possible. And each one of us could do our own part in facilitating that. And in the meantime, we can benefit our own lives, our own relationships in the process. And the reason why I'm giving this message specifically to women is that it's women who have suffered the most in patriarchy. It's women that patriarchy has given the most problems to, because patriarchy has generally limited the power of women. You know, particular things, you know, the causes that women have fought against over the last, you know, 100 years or so, decades, you know, fighting for the votes, fighting for equal opportunities, et cetera, et cetera. And as we know, that still has not been achieved. Okay, so I think that's enough of an introduction. So you are, as a woman, your potential is as a representative of the divine feminine. So what do you have to do to embody that? And what do I mean when I say you've got to transform the patriarchal, your patriarchal conditioning? Well, let's boil it down to, you know, to what's in the way of being what's in the way of each person expressing themselves most authentically, just being themselves? And what's in the way for most of us is a whole load of things that go on in our minds, and the talk and the chat that goes on in our minds, and also our emotional reactions to events in our lives, which have been colored by our conditioning and our wounding. And so we can call these our emotional reactive patterns. Now, emotions and thoughts are linked. So we find if we've got a limiting belief, let's say, you know, everybody's got their own version of the I'm not good enough story, for example. It's just slightly different flavoring, if you like, for each person. So some people's version of I'm not good enough is I'm not worthy, I'm not deserving, I'm not lovable, I'm insignificant, I'm not important. We've all got a slightly different take on the I'm not good enough. It's something slightly different flavoring of that which comes through each one of us, and that's imprinted in various ways. So yes, we can go back through the experiences in our lives to see how that might have formed, and we can also see it in things like versions of it in things like, you know, our astrology charts, our human design charts, other ways. All of the traditions have talked about this sort of wounding, or something that holds the whole identity structure together. Each of us have formed a defensive structure, if you like, around us, and a lot of spiritual practice, spiritual work is about dissolving that identity structure. Some people call it like dissolving the ego. Of course, we actually do need an ego, but what we're actually doing is we're transforming it. We're actually strengthening it to be something different, not this impenetrable castle walls that many people put around themselves until they start doing personal and spiritual work. But yes, it's a different type. We're deconstructing and reconstructing. There are two aspects to the spiritual journey, and some might refer to it as the going up the mountain, the understanding of who and what we are at the most fundamental level. And this is when we learn that or, you know, understand that we are more than just the body and the mind and the emotions, that there's a whole other dimension, pure presence, pure being, pure awareness, and that in that place, and we access that place beyond the place of the mind. And when we're in that pure being, pure presence, that's where we experience more expanded states, ourselves as limitless beings, ourselves as unconditional love. You know, the wisdom qualities, they lie there. It's in the mind where our fear-based qualities, our reactive patterns, those patterns that that cause us to be mired in obstructive places like superiority or inferiority, or cause us to be chronically situated in one emotional state, like chronic anger, chronic depression, things like that. It's like we're not flowing with the ever-changing landscape. So in the most authentic state, we are flowing with emotion. We're responding appropriately with emotion. So how do we get to that? How do we get to that? And it's by this process of dissolution of the reactive patterns. And it's also the same way that we get back to our maybe our authentic state as a representation of the divine feminine and the divine masculine live in each one of us, women and men. But what I'm actually saying to women is, as the world currently is, I personally believe that, representations of the divine feminine, people who are embodied in that, people who are anchored in an authentic representation, they're linked back to what I've called in a previous video, the divine mother. So those divine energies are flowing through them without impediment into the world. So in order to be that, there are these two phases. There's this one phase of deconstructing, of encountering yourself in the pure being state, of learning to find, or how to find, equanimity and groundedness, clarity and stillness, the ability to act in an effortless way and responsively without putting loads of thoughts and anxieties and everything in the way. The ability not to numb our emotions out of fear of abandonment or betrayal. So a lot of human challenges and dilemmas, we're all human, we've all visited all of these places. But my experience, both for myself and the clients that I work with, is that you don't need to identify with these states. Everything changes, and it's quite possible to dissolve states and conditions that have been there for a long time. It's quite possible to shift chronic depression, chronic anxiety, chronic anger. When we're in these states, we're not embodying the fullness of our divine capacities. So there's the one part of the journey which is about dissolving these patterns. And that is, of course, it's ongoing, but while there's another part of the journey, it's like once we've unwound enough of that we can connect with a more authentic sense of self. Once we can be in a deconditioned state, at least, a certain proportion of that, we're not, an image I often use is like, if you see the mind as being like the sky, which is a metaphor that's often used in the Indian and Buddhist tantric pathways. You see, the mind is like the sky, right? So what we want is we want a clear blue sky. We don't want a sky that has thick thunderclouds, which is often the conditioned state. Is like there's such thick clouds there that you can't see the blue sky or the sun, and you don't know yourself as the blue sky or the sun. You only know yourself as the thunderclouds. So what I'm helping my clients do is clear away those thunderclouds. There's more blue sky, there's more sunshine, there's more connection to the what I'm calling the divine mother, however you want to see it. But when you've got that connection, you're then connected to, you know, your intuition, you're connected to something that is not this, is beyond the mind. You're connected into the quantum field, if you like. You can look at it that way. You're connected to that. Things then like your astrology chart, your human design chart, are showing you the unique imprint that you are carrying, the unique potential of this or aspect of the divine mother that you are carrying. So that's when we can start looking at what is it that's really unique to you? What is your role in the grand scheme? Because if each, let's say that, you know, if each being here on this planet is one facet of the jewel, which is the divine feminine and masculine, or the divine mother, if we like, if everybody is one facet of this jewel, then everybody is needed. Everybody is carrying one aspect of the divine. So your astrology chart, your human design chart shows, is one way. There are other ways, but these are the ways that I use to show people the energies that are theirs, the energies that are, it's like where you have got a following wind to develop the potential of those energies. That is your gift to the world. And as a woman, that's your imprint, that's you as a representation of the divine feminine once you're able to develop that. So that's what we want in the world. More people, both women and men, more people who are aligned with their energetic design, who are not only aligned with it, but working with it to bring that out through their work and their relationships. Right? And then there are other aspects of that as well, because one of the things that I do very much like to do is, in addition to working with astrology and human design to show people their divine imprint, I also do that work through color, because the pigments in our hair, skin, and eyes are also related to our gifts, the particular emanation of the divine that we're bringing into the world. And it very much helps when we're dressing in accordance, you know, in colors and styles which accord with, you know, with the imprint that is ours to develop, to play with, to offer to others. Then we're presenting ourselves in a consistent way. Others can see it, others can feel it, and we are giving our unique gifts into the world as a representation of the divine. It of course works for men as men as well, but today I specifically wanted to speak to women and to give you this message that you are a representation of the divine feminine. You are the divine feminine by design, and I would love to help you to embody that, to bring your gifts out into the world, to remove these you know, the conditioned imprints that stand in the way of you being able to give those gifts, or of you being able to give those gifts in a natural way without the impediment of severe levels of anxiety or depression, or yes, anger, or whatever, or anything, you know, else that is in the way of the freedom of being you, being yourself. Lots of love, and bye for now.